Awesome. Awesome.
All
Oh, I'm
right.
excited for today.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for being in this awesome room. And I'm so sad that Janelle can't join us today. She got
Hmm.
the flu.
Yep.
So, as we know, when we heal, when we go through, when we recover from anything, this is the aspect of finding that time to rest,
Yep.
giving your body exactly what it needs, which could be
Exactly.
just the space
Yep.
to begin recovering. Okay. So, absolutely awesome. Melissa, I'm so glad you're with me today in this beautiful circle. And so, what we were going to talk about today is holding on to the dis ease.
Mm.
What does that mean to you, Melissa?
Thank you for that question. So, when we're thinking about chronic illness or something that we've had for quite some time,
Mm-hmm.
we don't necessarily think about holding on to that disease.
Mm-hmm.
But what that means to me is when we've had this kind of a life experience, the disease has come, it's here, it's present. It's really hard sometimes for our identity to not become that disease. And I'll kind of tell a story here to illustrate this. So, for example, a couple years ago, I was working with this precious gal, and we were working on if I remember right, it was rheumatoid arthritis, a pretty advanced case of rheumatoid
Mm-hmm.
arthritis. And she was really working hard on bringing balance back into the body, and her body was healing beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And during one of our calls, she's like, by the way, I'm going to have to quit working with you because I am so much better that I am not going to be able to qualify for disability anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart went out to her because that had become a space of security for her. And she later, we worked back together and she just continued to get well. So there's a really lovely ending to this story. But
Mm-hmm.
for a moment, she took a break because she needed her mindset and her heart to really catch up to the fact that her body could be well and that then she could choose whether she went back to work or not. She could choose what she wanted to do with the disability piece. But it was a wake up moment for me around how deeply we can become or take on the identity of our disease. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
I think it makes beautiful sense when you talk about that. And you also said a very powerful word. And I want to do a shout out to Sarah. Sarah, so glad you're here. And
Hey,
also,
Sarah.
Sarah, if you have any questions at all, or if anybody has any questions for Melissa or I as you're moving forward on your recovery journey, definitely ask them in chat. We'll do our best to answer them. And so definitely put all your questions in there. So thank you so much. So what I was going to say, Melissa, is you said a powerful word is we get to choose. So do you think at some aspect when we get diagnosed with the dis-ease, are we unintentionally removing choices from our life, or are we choosing to have the dis-ease in order to block us or to guard us from either having a conversation or having to go back to work to a job that we hated or
Mhm.
something like this, where it's almost as if we are avoiding something. And this is where I'm being trepidatious in how I approach this, is because it can this thought process can hurt. This can hit a trigger within
Mhm.
us. I know for me, like when I was diagnosed, if somebody said to me at that time, "Are
Mhm.
you bringing this into you?" I'd have been like, "I think we need to go out in the parking lot and have a different." Like I would
Yep.
be so like full of fire and anger in that moment. So
Mhm.
does something like that happen? Have you noticed that for all the years
Mhm.
that you've worked with clients?
I love this question, and I want to surround this answer with so much love and empathy.
Mm,
And this is why. Because when I was so sick with MS, with multiple sclerosis, I did not realize that a large piece of that was as a result of trauma,
mm,
right?
right.
And really looking at that and knowing that took me years to peel those layers back.
Mhm,
And the actual work around that trauma began when I began to get better. So the choice to say, I think I can do this, I think I can be well, that was
mhm,
like me turning the handle and opening the door to my body being like, okay, all right, I can go with you on this journey.
mm,
So when you ask the question, is this somehow, does it become our illness? Does it become something that we use as a shield
mm,
or as, a reason for the way that we are?
mhm,
This is a really huge question. And this is something that it's hard to ask this question of ourselves. And
mhm,
if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, I really need to ask myself that question, but I'm afraid,
mhm,
just take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Give yourself a moment, because to be afraid to look at that and ask your question,
mhm,
that question of yourself, it's okay to be afraid. Give yourself space to ask that question. Because what happens is when you're able to ask that question and just sit with that, not judging yourself for being afraid, not judging yourself for how did I get here? Why am I here? But really just giving yourself space to sit with that question.
mhm,
It gives your subconscious and your heart and all the parts and pieces of you that are hurting a
mhm,
voice and a moment in time to be recognized. And many times when we just do that, it breaks the cord or it lessens the strength of that tie.
mhm,
So when we think about our dis-ease process, and for many of us, it came on, we didn't want it, we
mhm.
didn't plan on it, we didn't ask for it,
Right.
but in a backwards way, especially when we look at how the body is responding or acting in this disease process,
Mhm,
it can be linked back to us being unsafe. And it's a
mhm,
way for our bodies to do what it can to create a safety net for us. And when that's a part of our world long enough, it can become a place of going, I'm this way because I have XYZ.
mm.
Does that make sense?
I think yes, it does. In a big way, it makes sense. And I love what you said at the beginning. I mean, I'm gonna remember rephrase that. I don't love what you said at the beginning, but what you said what you said at the ending was very powerful. I am this way because I have. So and like you said very powerfully, we identify as this dis-ease. So thinking about that question a little bit further in your life, is there a moment where you had wanted something to stop within your life prior to the dis-ease? Was there something that you were wanting to get away from? It could be a job, could be a family member that made you feel terrible. It could have been abuse. It could have been any trauma that you were experiencing in your life. Was there a moment where you were wanting a reason to get away from that situation? The body is very amazing, because your body will be like, "Oh, you want to get away from that? Oh, okay, we're going to create this
Mhm.
which will give you the ultimate card to play.
Mhm. Yeah. I think, if I may, sometimes it becomes really confusing because in the medical world, when we are given a diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying your body is doing this, so a diagnosis, just to give you a quick synopsis of what that is. I mean, we've all had them, right?
Yeah.
Or been told them, you have whatever it is. But literally, a diagnosis is a collection of symptoms or test results that brings a conclusion that you might have this specific disease process that has a name.
Mm-hmm.
And then the diagnosis, the name, is really just describing what's happening in the body. Whereas when that diagnosis comes down, so many times it's easy to go, well, I have this. And we get it switched around to go, I have these symptoms because I have this. When actually it's the body going, help. And
Yeah.
there are always a reason for the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And the diagnosis, that name can sometimes be like putting a rock in your backpack, and you go through life and you end up with 10 or 20 of them. It's really heavy. And it really is just your body being in more and more imbalance or dis-ease. And these symptoms can be addressed when we figure out what's actually causing them. So I think I got off track.
No, but you're bringing up another point. I just want to let everybody know, if you have a question for Melissa or myself, definitely pop it in chat. We'd love to talk with you. So, with all that kind of thing, but what you're talking about is if the dis-ease is just a conglomeration of symptoms that then gave us a label,
Mm-hmm.
let's say the label of MS,
Mm-hmm.
do you find that it's so much we match that label? We start living in that label. So we look at
Mm-hmm.
the symptoms, that whether they're
Mm-hmm.
showing up in the body or not,
Mm-hmm.
we start to take a look at and be aware of every little symptom, whether it's optic
Mm-hmm.
neuritis or whether we're not walking as well, whether we're
Mm-hmm.
wobbly when we do stand up, or we have vertigo, like issues, that we are basically at that point, because of the label, it has now led us down this road of being that label.
Ah.
You asked me a very powerful question, Melissa, when we were doing some work together. And I'm going to make a big decision in my life here in July. I am going to ask, the woman that I'm dating to marry me. And so, oh yeah, super excited. So, but you asked me a very powerful
Mm-hmm.
question. Does your body trust you to get married again? You were
Mm-hmm.
married for 21 years, Matt. There
Mm-hmm.
were good times and there were bad times and there were all of this, but it all ultimately came to a close. Is my body feel that it's safe? So then, is this under that aspect, is kind of like flipping on the other side of it. So if I'm diagnosed with the dis-ease, does then all of a sudden, as I go to recover from the dis-ease, does the body kind of isn't safe, or doesn't trust me that I won't go
Mm-hmm.
back into the old way that got me out of balance? That I wouldn't step into this relationship again the old way, not in unity, but very much on masculine, feminine, that kind of side, which has its polarities and its struggles with all of that. So with the dis-ease, you find that the body is just looking for trust.
In so many ways.
Okay.
In so many ways. Um, so like when we start looking at what's happening in the body and we start figuring out the physiological things and the biological things and all the pieces, right? We're looking for what is out of balance now, because those are the quickest and easiest things to actually address. But when we start addressing those and the body begins to feel better, one of the most common questions I get are things like, okay, this is so awesome. I love feeling this way, but when's the next shoe going to drop? Can I trust this?
Yeah.
Right. And so when we're thinking about making the decision to really lean in and figure out what's causing this dis-ease process in our body, it is literally giving yourself permission to explore listening to your body and explore what it feels like to trust your body and for your body to trust you. Does that make sense?
I think very powerfully makes sense. So you're talking about the aspect of no longer identifying as the dis-ease. Now, if this is something that we've done for the last 20 years, then it's something that we're used to. This is an ingrained neural pathway that we might be, when we go out and we go to walk and we're in front of other people walking into a restaurant and we're walking with sticks and we're not very balanced. The story we'll tell ourselves is, well, I have this. They wouldn't understand. They do. So now we're identifying stronger to that.
Yeah. Thanks for posting, Sarah. And I want to tell just a quick story about a little gal that I'm working with that came to me with MS, and I'm air quoting on purpose. Like, that was her diagnosis. We looked at everything. We looked at all of her, what her body was doing. All the symptoms pointed to MS. And that's how she got the diagnosis. But as we dug deeper and we looked at more reasons why her body was doing what it was, we really were able to uncover that it's very likely that she doesn't have MS. She has intense mold toxicity and hormone imbalance that are causing her symptoms. So when we're thinking about what is causing the dis-ease process, we need to think about why our body is giving these clues to us and not necessarily put a name on it. Does that make sense? And it gives us freedom, some freedom to wiggle and think about, how can I be well?
Okay. So then you are basically giving it for a whole nother powerful reason instead of being this label that the doctors tell us is incurable. So we step into this. So Sarah had a really good question. Now, Sarah and I do some work together. And you're not pestering me at all, Sarah. That's not even like close to it. But what I've seen you do very powerfully, Sarah, and I'm going to bring this up because we were in a group coaching call this morning, and you had said on Friday you felt really good. You got up, you walked, you're working around, you got into bed all right, like all this stuff. You felt like things had turned a corner a little bit on Friday. And then come Saturday morning, all back to the way it was. So I'm going to ask Melissa this, is those ups and downs where you'll get an evening that's really good. You're going to the bathroom, you're walking, you're getting all that is working really well. And then it kind of dips back to the way it was.
Yeah. So that's a common occurrence. But what we expect to happen is more days of the up days or the good days and less of the bad days beginning to happen.
Okay.
So one of the things to think about is when you are working on this from a mindset space and really working on what's happening inside, that can lay the foundation for very effective physiological work, like figuring out what is wrong in the body. Do we have bacterial overgrowth? Do we have parasites? Do we have, low vitamin D? Do we have low iron? Is our liver not working good? Are our hormones out of balance? And I could string out a whole bunch of things, but when you have that base, Sarah, what you're doing right now is so powerful. And yes, there is a step forward, a step back sometimes that it feels. But you're in a very good place. This is normal. It's not that your body is giving up on you or that you're giving up on your body. It's just, this is what we call the healing journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, with that is, in those good moments is even thinking about what was I thinking about
Hmm.
prior to that moment? What
Yeah.
did I do? Did I sit longer in meditation? Did I eat something different? Did
Hmm.
I have a moment where I laughed at something, even like you were maybe watching the television and you
Hmm.
saw something and you got laughing about it. And then with no thought, you get up and you walk around and you do this stuff. And then
Yeah.
that no thought continues in that
Yeah.
space. Then if you wake up Saturday morning and there's a different event, you're worried
Hmm.
about Mother's Day coming up, or you're worried about your brother coming to visit you, or you're worried about,
Hmm.
I've got to do this, or you get into that, I got to do this. I got to make
Hmm.
sure I have this. Man, I
Yeah.
hope I have enough energy. Like what I'm going to
Yeah.
call kind of like the spiral, not down, but the spiral not headed in the direction you want to go.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I love how Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this is breaking the habit of being yourself.
Hmm.
Is on Friday,
Hmm.
had you stepped out of being yourself, identifying with the dis-ease, saying moments like, oh, I have, like, even if it's subconscious, even if this
Hmm.
stuff comes in, the trick is or the tricky part can be is that we are unaware of these thoughts that enter our mind.
Hmm.
We notice physically we're doing
Hmm.
well and we're like, so that's where we're allowing the body to be the number one speaker,
Yeah.
when there's usually possibly something else
Hmm.
that whether we forgot about it for a minute, we didn't think about it, like and all of that, then we wake up in the morning, we can look at if we're noticing a symptom or it's hard to walk again, or all of that stuff is what do we have coming up into the future. Are we worried about something? Are we sad? Do we have, are we identifying, do we even, it could be the swing of the legs over on the edge of the bed and we notice numbness in our feet. And the first thought is, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those days again.
Mm.
And then the
Yeah.
body responds.
Curious that you gave that, the numbness in the feet, because I used to celebrate every morning when I swung my feet over and I put my feet on the floor and I could feel it. I could feel the floor because there were so many years when I could not feel the floor at all.
Mhm.
Was it
Yeah,
cold? Was it hot? Was it carpet? I didn't know
got nothing.
until
Yeah.
I looked down and saw.
Mhm. How powerful that is in all these moments that can be that subtle of
Mhm.
a thing. Now, I would imagine that when you felt the floor and you were excited, when you went to go down and have breakfast, let's just take the next hour of your
Mhm.
day,
Yeah.
was probably you felt good. You felt possible. Even if you're using
Mm.
walking sticks or a
Mhm.
walker, whatever you were
Yep.
using, you felt powerful when you were doing it.
I love what you just said. You felt possible,
Yeah.
because that's where we can heal the most. And it doesn't matter if you're working with mindset, if you're working with emotional space, if you're working with trauma, if you're working with bacterial overgrowth, if you're really working on getting rid of, toxic exposure to mold, if you're really,
Yeah.
working on bringing your neurological system back online. It doesn't matter if you can stay in the space of what is possible.
Yeah.
That really kind of throws the chains off and lets your body really, your mind, body, spirit, all the parts of you, just like, okay, let's do this. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you said possible too. So, I mean, really, when you're looking at this, I mean, when you take a look at the placebo effect, why is the placebo effect 42% effective for individuals that take the sugar pill? Is it because that sugar pill is exactly what their body needed, or did they believe it was possible? They believe it was even possible. I'm on the drug trial with the actual drug.
Yeah.
This is going to make a difference for me. I'm going to take this step powerfully forward. So, when you
Yeah.
look at it from a functional medicine perspective, when you're doing all these tests, are you helping set the stage for that possible?
Oh, yeah. Because you get to see why, right?
Mhm.
Or at least for me, you know, so just case in point, another client that I'm working with right now, we just did blood work for her and her iron is in the tank. I mean, so far in the tank, which iron really helps you build red blood cells, right? And
Mhm.
if your muscles don't get red blood, what happens? They don't work very good. They're really weak and flaccid, and your body starts using, like, prioritizing your brain and your heart and your
Mhm.
internal organs. That's what gets it first, right?
Mhm.
Those have to be supported. But because her iron is so low, I'm like, girl, I don't know how you get out of bed
Mhm.
because it's so low. There's just going to be like no energy. We're bringing that up for her, and she's like, oh, this is nice. But when you get to see, that's a very simple thing. But when you get to see why your body is experiencing some of these
Mhm.
symptoms, it's like, oh, that's a simple fix,
Mhm.
right? And then your body starts to really feel better. And then, so just carrying that example out, when she has enough iron, enough B12, just to make new red blood cells,
Mhm. Yeah.
and the oxygen starts to go around her body, her cells are actually fueled. Oxygen is really getting to the brain, getting to the heart. The muscles are starting to work better. Her body is starting to go, oh, okay, I'm coming back to life here.
Mhm.
And so then nutrition from what she's bringing in, what she's eating, what's getting broken down is starting to go out into the cells. Her cells can actually use it, and it
Yep.
starts a cascade of healing, of
Okay.
recovery. And so when we're doing testing, we're really driving deep and figuring out what's going on in the body, and we're able to see why. It once again kind of breaks a chain of, I am this way because I have this. And you're
Mm.
like, oh, I have this symptom because for her, intense fatigue and
Right.
just, her, just every muscle feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
For her, it's like, oh, it's not because I have, and then whatever her diagnosis, it's because I don't have hardly any iron in my body and my
Yeah.
body can't work right. So it
Right.
breaks the chain of, I have this,
Mhm.
to go, okay, because my body is in this space, this is
Mhm.
why I feel this way. And we can address it.
And I like how you said breaking the train from I am this to possibly I am possible.
Yeah.
I can recover. I can take a step towards this. And that's what, essentially what you're talking about with this element of possible. Because if I think I'm possible at that point, then anything I do, anything you recommend at that point, which is going to support my body and help me,
Mm-hmm.
I believe is going to work.
And it does. It's crazy. The parts of this, though, that I want you guys to really hear is how much this lies in your power of choice.
Mm. Yeah.
How much it lies in your power to say, is it possible? And get curious.
Mhm.
What if I could? I used to say, what if I could dance? I'm a terrible dancer, right? Oh, geez. But I like to try. And
Yeah.
what I meant in that statement was, what if my legs worked and
Mhm.
my coordination, and I didn't have so much vertigo that I had to touch something to figure out which way was up?
Yeah.
What if, so in essence, I was saying, what if my body worked well enough that I could at least try to dance?
Mhm.
Right? And
Yeah.
so giving myself a space of, I wonder, what if?
Yeah. That's it. What if you could?
And I did, and I do, and I still suck at dancing, but I love to try.
It doesn't matter. It's you entered into a different space of what if.
Mhm. Yeah. But in my work, and you could attest to this too, Matt,
Mhm,
is that the folks that walk into this recovery journey going, what if?
mhm,
They are the ones who go the farthest on this healing journey
mhm,
because it doesn't, like for me, it took 2.5 years for my symptoms to fully resolve, sustainably resolve, right?
mhm,
And for a lot of people, that's fast.
mhm,
For some people, it's slow.
mhm,
But when we look at this as a journey that we're not, it's like, I'm starting here, I'm ending here, but we go,
mhm,
I'm starting here and I'm going to continue.
mhm.
That's when we can experience the most lasting recovery.
Well, aren't you trusting yourself?
Mhm.
At that point, you're allowing the body to catch up because
Mhm.
the body is the last to respond.
Exactly.
Is, anytime if we especially if we've got long-term trauma, stress, all these moments that come in, our body is the last to respond to any of it. So, Susie, I see you have a question. Thank you so much for being here, Susie. So, for years, I allowed spondylosis to stop me. And at 50, I chose to ignore it and climb the foothills of the Rockies. Wonderful. And skied in Denver. Wonderful. Doesn't matter how well you did it, but you did it. Exactly. Ooh, I
Yeah,
wonder what
Susie, I
you
hear you about
answered
that.
that question, Susie, about the parasites.
Yes.
And Susie, I'm in my own parasite cleanse right now too. So I'd love to hear this answer.
Okay. So I am also returning to, so just a little bit about parasites, right? Parasites are buggers. And like for me, I've been doing this for how long, right? And so I'm just entering into another phase of working on parasites for myself. So
Mhm,
really cleaning up, mopping up after giving my body an extensive break because I needed it. So with parasites, I wish we could just mind over matter those buggers too. But really, when we think about what parasites do, they are literal, I don't know how to say it tastefully, but suckers.
mhm,
They literally steal from us. And many times when we're doing parasite work, we need to think about not just them, but what else in our life is stealing from us.
mm,
What choices are we making that steal from us? What relationships are we involved in that steal from us? What boundaries have we not held firm that allow something to literally be sucking the life out of us? So
mhm,
when we're working on parasites, it's bigger than just the parasites. But yes, we have to get those buggers out and then get your body to the place where it is an unfavorable environment for them to be back.
mhm.
And sometimes that's a process.
I love how you mention parasites are not just the little microbes inside of our bodies,
And sometimes not so little.
and sometimes they are not so little. I, I'm not even going to go down that road that
No, don't.
I'm fascinated now by every time I go to the bathroom, but that's besides the point. So you're talking about taking a look at it is if we attract parasites within our body to some degree, either we drank water, we got them from varied amount of areas.
Mhm.
It's not just the only parasites that we would bring in. We would bring in parasites externally too, because that's the energy we're putting out there.
Mhm.
That all of a sudden we could have a mother in law, we could have a spouse, a
Mhm.
partner, a friend that is somewhat of like a parasite. Like they want to grab a hold, they want to essentially either shame us or make us feel a specific way or make us have stress within our lives.
Yep.
Like the individuals that we leave, we go to a party and you're like, man, party was great, but man, I don't know if I want to get stuck talking to this person anymore. So you're really sitting at some point is taking a look at, have you removed all of the parasites, not just the ones inside the body?
Exactly. And I think that can be a lifelong, like, life happens, right? We move in and out of people's lives. We move in and out of jobs. We move in and out of environments. So it's a learning process. Like, something just came up over the weekend. I was like, okay, that is a boundary that is really full of holes that I need to shore up. And it's old stuff from long ago. And but now I was able to see that, and now I was able to make a choice around that. So it's more an intention in how we choose to live our life when we're really working on those things that can suck the life out of us. And it takes time sometimes, and so give yourself grace to intentionally think about those things and then making choices around that.
Yeah. I like how you said that. Is you're talking about responding to different situations. So is this elementally what we started with the body trusting you? So is that an element of that trust when you set those healthy boundaries? When you respond to situations instead of reacting to them? This is a step towards the body trusting you again. And then you're cleansing it, you're feeding it, you're removing the parasites from the inside. And then the body kind of goes, oh, okay, yeah, I don't need those anymore.
Yep.
And that possibility grows.
I love that. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Love it. Yeah.
Thank you, Susie, for your question. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my own life too, Susie, as I'm sitting there going, okay, what parasites do I have in? And some of them are very minor.
Right.
Something, maybe a thought I hold on to. Something I identify with. Is that me? Do I need to hold on to it anymore? And what's my reason for holding on to it?
Does it serve me now?
May have served me in the past, but oftentimes, no, this is not serving me now.
But look at this, how that puts you in the driver's seat. Just asking that simple question.
And Susie, yes, you are absolutely 100%. Melissa and I both have kids.
Yep.
I have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old. And there are moments, but it's when
there are moments.
There are moments. And oh man, I want to be a good dad. I wanted to say all the right, I want to say at least stuff that's not going to get me in jail. Like, not saying that, I'm joking. But really on this side is, there's, and especially if they're teenagers, they want to put you into a state of reaction. But ultimately, when I realize that I love me fully from within, that every aspect of me, the only thing I can be is an outpouring of love. So if my kids want a reaction from me or my kids did something, I noticed that my reaction had me resisting what they were doing. And then what I was resisting, they were persisting. And they walked farther down that road, which then it became this gigantic snowball that I felt that I could never get around. But first finding that love within me. And then it was nothing that I was doing with them. There was nothing, I wasn't being any different. I was just being my authentic. And Susie, you are a beautiful soul. And your kids see this. They're just being kids right now. So.
Yep. Oh, goodness. I love this conversation. So one of the things that I would ask of you guys is to share this out with your friends and family, the people in your world that you see are struggling with what is happening in their bodies, right?
Mhm.
Because when we look at this, there are a lot of layers.
Mhm.
And one of the very basic intentions behind doing this circle is to help you guys see how much power of choice you have, the possibilities that you have, how you can actually optimize you and your life.
Mhm.
So share this with the folks in your world that you love, that
Mhm.
you just are hoping and praying for a little window of hope for them.
Mhm. Thank you for saying that, Melissa. This is just a powerful step. And
Yeah.
it's just a step. We don't need to see the whole staircase, just one little step forward. And so if it gives you an ounce of hope, that's why, Melissa, Janelle, and I do this,
Right.
is that ounce of hope that we would have loved to have had when we were in our journeys.
Yeah.
And so taking this as saying, okay, maybe that one word that we said triggered you, or a phrase, or
Yes.
just any question that you asked, like gave you a little bit more of a, like even a 1% shift
Yep.
is enough to change the entire trajectory.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And to just let you guys know, we're accepting new clients. So if this is something that you feel like you want to explore with us, I think I put the link in here, or you put the link in there
I did.
somewhere.
Yep.
Awesome.
There should be a link.
So just access the discovery call link. That's a free call. You get to sit down with a coach and really talk through what's happening with you, really talk through what you've tried and what's worked and what hasn't, and lean into what do you want to accomplish. Like I was talking about before, celebrating being able to dance, right? What do you actually want to do? What do you want your life to look like?
Yeah.
And then leaning into the possibility of, okay, great. So how can I make this happen?
Absolutely wonderful. Melissa, thank you so much for this
Thank
time
you.
today. And thank you. I want to thank everybody for being on with us. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Susie and Sarah and everyone else that watches this. Thank you for letting us live in our heart's work and doing what we were meant to do. So,
Yeah. Love that.
okay.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too. We'll talk to
All
you all,
right.
everyone soon.
All right.